All right, good morning. Sunday, November the 24th, 57 days until Donald Trump's inauguration, and his administration is taking shape. As of today, Trump has named all 15 heads of executive departments and many other top administration posts for the start of his second term, including 10 announcements that were made just in the past 2 days. He chose anti-vaxxers, skeptics of science, a fossil fuel executive, other allies of the oil and gas industry, people with little to no experience leading large organizations, people with ties to neo-Nazi and Christian nationalist groups and ideologies, and a number of people who want to implement aggressive deregulation plans. All of that could spell trouble and result in lasting damage to public health, to the climate, to the environment, to national security, to foreign policy, and to the basic functioning of our federal government. There's a whole lot at stake, and it would be naive to think that Trump might be more restrained this time around, but small though it may be, we've also just witnessed the first defeat of Trump 2.0. The first successful pushback against his agenda, which came when the former Congressman Matt Gaetz was forced to withdraw his name from consideration for the position of Attorney General. Gaetz stepped back a few days ago as details continued to be reported out about the sexual misconduct allegations that he had faced, and he continues to deny, on top of the fact that he's one of the least liked people on Capitol Hill. He's a firebrand who irked many of his former colleagues. Not even Vice President-elect J.D. Vance could help him rehabilitate his reputation enough to salvage his chance of becoming the next Attorney General, setting aside the simple fact that Matt Gaetz was grossly unqualified for the position in the first place. Shortly after Gaetz and Vance spent a full day meeting with senators on Capitol Hill to gauge Gaetz's chance of becoming confirmed, Gaetz dropped out. It was reported that there are at least 5 Republican senators who were firmly opposed to his bid for Attorney General: the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, the Senators Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, and Markwayne Mullin, and the Senator-elect John Curtis. But NBC News also added that at least 20 and as many as 30 Republican senators were uncomfortable with the prospect of having to vote to confirm Gaetz for the role. This suggests that there are at least some safeguards in place that could be deployed against presidential overreach. In this case, the Senate acted as a bulwark. It took its constitutional responsibility of advice and consent seriously, and it prevented an unserious and unqualified candidate from being formally nominated. In 57 days, Donald Trump will regain the most powerful office in the world. He will undoubtedly wield his influence more forcefully once he's back in the White House. His party will also control both the House and the Senate for at least the next 2 years. But it's not the overwhelming mandate that they'd like you to believe. Their majorities in both chambers of Congress are narrow and precarious, and we know how dysfunctional they can be as a caucus. And we know something else. Donald Trump has certainly learned from his first term in office and is stepping into the second term with an eye toward removing every guardrail that stood in the way of his lawless impulses before. But we also learned other lessons from Trump's first term. We learned that pressure sometimes works, and that minds sometimes can be changed, that ordinary Americans can raise their voices and whistleblowers can shine light in the shadows. We learned that there are quiet, capable career government employees and military personnel who can muster great bravery in order to speak out and push back. On November 5th, we learned that the Trump era of American politics is not over, that the work to win back democracy from the brink is not done. So now it's time to figure out what that work looks like. Joining me now is Olivia Troye. She served as a senior advisor to then Vice President Mike Pence. She's a national opinion contributor for the We Lived It Substack by Courier Newsroom. She is also someone who has tried to fight both inside and outside government for the preservation of democracy. Olivia, good to see you. You are one of these people who had the moral clarity and the courage to speak up when you deemed it necessary. In your latest Substack post, you wrote it as a letter to somebody joining the Trump administration. Quote, "Now I know you're probably super MAGA right now. You're all in on America First and maybe even Project 2025. And you believe Donald Trump and his inner circle are just the team for the job. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, but I'd be willing to bet serious bank that you'll bear witness to something that changes your mind. Because if you love America, your patriotism will instinctively kick in at some point, and you'll see Trump for who and what he truly is. And then you'll be left with a quandary," end quote. Tell us about that quandary and how this incoming official, or maybe somebody who's already in the government, should navigate it.
I think the quandary is navigating your true ethics, your integrity, and your morals. And at what point you have to have your red lines and decide that a red line is not the one you're going to cross. And I think my letter was just very heartfelt, having been there and lived it and seen a lot of my colleagues get to that moment. And my letter was also to tell them that when that moment comes, it is important to take a stand, and it is important to be that guardrail, because it matters for the rest of the country. It matters for America. And that there will be people there that will have your backs, and they're going to make you feel like you're very alone, and they're going to try to bully you and intimidate you. But I think we need to remind everyone that, yes, we are here as Americans, and we will be there as a support system to support them and get them through it.
Tell me about what that looks like specifically. I know in your life it actually means very specific things, because you've spoken to people very specifically about your experience, about being made to feel alone, about being threatened, about continuing to face threats. What do we have as a responsibility as media, as people like you? What responsibility can we say to these people who are going to be brave and courageous that we will have your back? What does that look like?
I think it's a mix of things. A lot of it is, how do you navigate these threats? I've certainly been here as an advisor to others. I'm still getting calls today about what they're seeing on social media and what is real, what isn't. And I think it's important to really understand how law enforcement plays into this role, and also the legal system, providing protection via a network of attorneys and lawyers, and also the media, fact checking, and also having these voices on and talking about what they're seeing, what they're reflecting on, why it's important that they took a stand, and also just being there for each other and being a support network. And I say this because, as someone who faced the threats, and it was ugly very early on, I got attacked from both sides of the house. I got attacked from the Trump team, who called me a traitor. I got attacked by Republicans who said I was a traitor to my own party. But I also got attacked by the left, who judged me for having worked there to begin with. And so I think we need to build these permission structures, which is something that we've been doing these past couple of years, to be there in partnership for each other and say, yes, I'm going to be there, and I'm not going to attack you when you come forward. I'm going to give you a home and space for you to tell us what we're up against and tell the truth about what this really is and what's happening here.
So you bring up an interesting point. Fealty to the Constitution, fealty to your country, fealty to honesty and doing the right thing is not actually ideological. So if somebody comes forward and or even stops some bad action from taking place in the government, the fact that they are or were a Republican or a Democrat or a conservative or a liberal, or whatever you want to call them, is not relevant in that moment. I've heard all sorts of criticism about Democrats shouldn't have embraced Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney's on the same side as we all are right now, the side of democracy. Later on, we can fight about minimum wage and universal health care and all that kind of stuff, and we should in a democracy. But the point you're making and that you demonstrate is, if it's you or it's Liz Cheney or it's Alexander Vindman, you're choosing democracy over not democracy. That's enough to be on my team.
Yes. And for me, it was a moral decision, because it was, especially during the pandemic, I was watching a health crisis that was rising, and Americans' lives were being put at risk and in grave danger. I think we'll face that again, given some of the Trump picks that are going to be in charge of our health system and the CDC. I'm seeing some picks being placed very specifically there. And for me, it was also, drawing the line when people have the right to peacefully protest and hear their voices heard. But then when I heard that there were potential for military to be used against American people, that was a red line. And these are things that should not matter politically in terms of where you are. It should matter that you've got to do the best thing for all of us in our country. That's how we're going to navigate the next 4 years under Donald Trump. And he will test us. He will test the system. We know this. And it's going to be that much worse, because at least I was sitting in the room at the table with people who actually did put the Constitution a lot of the time over their own personal beliefs, over their personal gratitude and benefit and power to really take a stand and hold the line. Those people, for the most part, are not going to be the people sitting in the room this time. And it's going to be the rest of the system that's going to have to hold.
You worked in COVID response during the end of your career, but you've worked in anti-terrorism stuff and in national security. A lot of this may fall to people who can't go public. They might be FBI agents. They might be CIA agents. They might be employees of the Department of Justice or the CIA. That's actually a worry, particularly with Tulsi Gabbard as the nominee, because she's expressed views that are in line with our adversaries and can do a great deal of damage, because she will have more information than literally any other American except the president to highly classified, top secret information that could compromise lives and American national security.
Yes, and certainly this is something that I think is going to test the national security communities. How do you navigate with someone at the very top and at the helm that could potentially put your own assets, your own personnel, and your own integrity of the system of how the national security community works on the line, and potentially put them in harm's way with foreign adversaries if they're an ally to that foreign adversary? And I'm glad you said that, Ali, because I had to leave my career to come forward, right? I was a career national security person who was serving as an intelligence officer in the White House for Mike Pence. I was there to do my job in that way. And in order to speak out, I had to leave my career. I had to leave my job at DHS because you don't talk to the media. You don't, come forward publicly and so there are going to be these voices in the background, and they're the ones that are going to be called the deep state. They're the ones that are going to be attacked when they tell the truth at the table and they take a stand. I saw many leaders, decorated admirals, people that had mentored me throughout my entire career, take the fall for the rest of the community in these moments. And I think it's going to come to true leadership along the ranks outside of the main leader in power to protect the community and really take a stand and be the bulwark in that situation.
We're going to count on those heroes, those brave people. We're going to count on your bravery, which is not a past thing. It's going to become very relevant now as people turn to you to say, what do I do? So I want to remind people that you are one of those people who took action that was to the detriment of your life and your career, and we honor you for that. Olivia Troye is a hero. She's the former senior advisor to Vice President Mike Pence. Thanks for being with us, Olivia.